What is good, Osiris here is stuck in the middle. Before I get into Bari Weiss on Bill Maher, I want to make sure I say no more football predictions. I was shocked to see the Bengals beat the Titans. I really like the Titans. I was shocked to see San Francisco beat Green Bay. And nothing against, I like all of those teams. I thought the Titans and Green Bay were going to win, though. And I'm a Browns fan, so maybe I don't know what winning really is about in a sad way. My son today, I did send this out through YouTube. My son today said, "Daddy, why aren't the Browns playing today?" And I was like, let's not get into that today, son." But jumping into Bari Weiss. Bari Weiss was on with Bill Maher. I will put a link to the clip that went viral on Bill Maher so you can get the full context of it. I'm not going to read the whole thing. But in general, what happened was Bari Weiss, she was amped up, ready to go right when the panel started with her and Richie Torres. Richie Torres is the congressman out of the 15th District of New York, supposedly this rising star in the Democrat Party. He's just a young Hakeem Jeffries, just a Schumer robot, Pelosi robot. But she was amped and ready to go. She was like, she looked at Richie after um, Bill Maher threw the question out. He kind of threw out a question like, "We're kind of tired of this stuff," and she was amped and ready to go. Richie was like, he just said some dribble, and then Bari Weiss went off. She's a leftist. Whatever, I don't care. We have interest conversion here. She's a Democrat shill. We all know that, but this we need numbers. This is a numbers game. The more numbers of people who believe that we've got to question this stuff, the government response, the better. Bari Weiss said, "We were told to get the vaccine. You get the vaccine and you get back to normal." We haven't gotten back to normal, and it's ridiculous at this point, Weiss began. I know that so many of my liberal and progressive friends are with me on this, and they do not want to say it out loud because they are scared to be called anti vax, to be called science deniers, or be smeared as a Trump supporter. How that makes sense, I have no idea, but she's right. That could happen. So she said all that stuff. If you believe the science, you look at the data that we did not have 2 years ago, that's a point of contention. Israel, they have had Pfizer. They are 6, 7 months ahead of us. We've had data 6 to 7 months ahead of where we were going to be every single time. So she's wrong there, but hey, I'm not gonna stop you. Go on your roll, say your thing. She said some things that I don't even know if I can say on YouTube. But the end of it, she got the applause from a leftist, heavy leftist uh, audience. Now I like Bill Maher. He's more of a free thinker than most leftists. But she ended, Bari Weiss said, "That's why we need to end the lockdowns and declare it a pandemic of bureaucracy." And people started clapping. The part that frustrates me is Bill Maher. I've been a fan of Bill Maher since Politically Incorrect on ABC back in the '90s to the early 2000s before I believe he had a joke on 9/11 that was people didn't like and he got canceled. And it's frustrating to see smart people like Bari Weiss and Bill Maher bring up this topic as a surface level topic and have a congressman sitting there on the panel with them and not getting deeper, a little bit deeper. I mean, this is a show, you're not going to get into the nuances of things, but you can get a little bit deeper. Bill, if you have so much time to go after Trump repeatedly on your show, and you go after Trump, and I hate this because you just don't want to be kicked out of the club. So it's like, okay, I'm criticizing Democrats, but I'm going to have to also criticize Trump. Like, you don't have to criticize Trump every episode. He has nothing to do with this. He's not a president right now. This was the headline topic on the show. My frustration is they didn't get to a level deeper. How can you talk about these restrictions, closures, and not bring up Fauci and not bring up emergency orders? How is that possible? It's not possible. If you're going to have a honest discussion about this and you have a policymaker on literally there with you, Dr. Fauci, so we found out early in this pandemic, they did not talk about this on the show. Bill Maher's never talked about this. And it's frustrating. He just maybe needs a better guess. I don't know what the situation is, but we found out early in this pandemic that this was a battle of philosophy, not science. Dr. Fauci has been the lead philosopher on this the whole time. His goal is to bring an Eastern philosophy to Western culture. Now, they did kind of literally for like 2 seconds talk about it, that part of it. When Bill Maher said, he wasn't even really getting into that. He was talking about the logistics of the vaccine. So he wasn't really even getting into the philosophy. Dr. Fauci early on highlighted the two nations that would be the most difficult to change to an Eastern philosophy. Obviously, the UK and the United States, with which spawned off of the UK or England hundreds of years ago. Dr. Fauci said this. He said they won't do as they're told. They're going to be the hardest to make them do as they're told.
That would accept if a ruler tells us you must do this. I was talking with our UK colleagues just today who were saying the UK is very similar to where we are now in outbreak because each of our countries have that independent spirit of we don't want to be told what to do. Well, I understand that, but now is the time to do what you're told. And I think it really is something that we should be doing right now.
This is the highest paid public official, the most powerful public official in the most powerful Western country in the world. And that's the context. He says, why we're not doing as we're told. A public U.S. official saying that. And then that leads you down the road of what makes our country special is the Constitution and our mode of government of representation through legislation for citizens. They don't have that form of government in China. The people are not represented in their laws. So you don't need to get too deep. That's what I'm pissed off about, Bill. I watched the show. You never address the fact that these pandemic response, the bureaucracy that you're talking about, that she talked about, when you have a legislator on the panel with you, these laws, like in New York, Richie Torres is a representative of New York. These laws were done through mayoral emergency order. In California, Gavin Newsom, governor order. He talked about Florida. He talked about comparing it to California, but never brought up these are emergency orders going on 2 years. That's how it's happening. And Bari Weiss getting applause in a deep leftist audience after she's done shows you why there's no legislation over 2 years on the pandemic response. It's all edicts and orders because those laws would not be popular and those legislators don't want to be voted out of office like Richie Torres. They never asked Richie Torres, do you agree with Eric Adams doing these mayoral orders? Then if you do, then why doesn't the legislation, why aren't they passed through legislation? Why are we bypassing the will of the people 2 years into this? I'll end with this. When we potentially see an America First I keep saying that because a red wave doesn't mean anything unless it's a Marjorie Taylor Greene type America First candidate, like a true one. We know there's going to be snakes in the grass and phonies, but assuming it's a true red wave, one of the radical things I want to see them do is get rid of, and I think this is going to be a difficult one because it's going to have to be done through a constitutional amendment, but I want to see a push on limiting the emergency orders of, I think, got to start with the executive branch. And see if you can get momentum for that at the state level and beyond. That has to be reined in. People will argue there's times like natural disaster, things like that. I need that to be limited. I don't understand. Like if there's a hurricane, why can't the the legislative branch get involved quickly? We're not living in a time where you need a horse and carriage to go meet and sign a letter. We have technology, like you should be able to convene whoever needs to be convened like that. I don't understand what's happening. Same with war. We're allowing, Congress isn't voting on use of military power. That's the same cracks in the system that allowed everything that happened that Bari Weiss went off on, Bill. And you guys just completely ignored that part of it. That's the biggest weakness. That's the biggest takeaway from this whole thing, is the emergency order power and the attempt to change the whole philosophy of the West. So let me know what you think. That's what frustrated me. I'm clapping for Bari Weiss. I support it. I know it's like, oh, what took her so long to come around? Whatever. She's around now. Let's get more numbers and let's get this momentum going. Let me know what you think. Take care.